Listen, cause I'm preaching to the choir. Can I get the mic a little higher? What? It's been in my head since I watched it. I don't know what you want me to do. So it's me. I'm back, and today's video is gonna be another repaint. Wahoo! So I have an ever-expanding dinosaur collection. Do I love it? Yes. Am I spending a bit too much money? Also yes. But one of my favorite models is this Safari LTD Triceratops figure from 2017. And in fact, if you're a returning viewer, you may remember it from a cameo it made a few months ago, specifically in the video where I made this guy. And from the start, I've wanted to repaint it since its colors are so basic. And because Triceratops is such an important dinosaur in anybody's collection, this was something I had to rectify.
So before I get into the repaint, I wanted to give my thoughts on this animal first.
I measured this figure at 20.6 centimeters long, which gives us a 7.2 meter animal for 1 to 35th scale, which while on the smaller end means it plays really well with my other Hell Creek animals. Plus the epiossifications on the frill are quite prominent, which if we follow Horner and Goodwin's paper, means we've got a younger individual that hasn't resorbed them yet. The species we get appears to be Triceratops horridus, which is the oldest species. We can see that the short nasal horn, accounting for keratin, and the shape of the frill fits closer with that species. The proportions are perfect, with Doug Watson's mastery of ceratopsian anatomy being evident, much improved over the older Vagaceratops, which is the only other Safari ceratopsian I currently have. The face is replete with scale detail, but they could have done with some finer and more differentiated ones, which end up making the painting trickier, as you'll see later. The scales on the body appear quite large, but that's Triceratops for you. This beautiful fossil known as the Lane specimen preserves large patches of skin, and we see these large tubercle-looking scales with nippling. These have been interpreted as large bumps, similar to the actual fossil, or a potential attachment for quills or spines, though the latter ideas are no longer accepted. And they were actually this big in scale with the animal, surprisingly, and some of the works by Mark Whitten really emphasize this. The rhombohedral scales on the throat and belly are also accurate and known from the Lane specimen. The limbs have the correct number of fingers and toes, with only 3 fingers being weight-bearing and possessing hoof-like nails. Overall, it's super nice, but the main letdown is the paint. While not egregious or even poorly applied for the most part, it's very boring. And while realistic, since large animals tend to be drab, there's still variety and interesting ways you could take it. And the yellow spots on the frill look bad, I'm sorry. Very stenciled and flat, and not exactly an appealing yellow when compared to the body. That and the flat application on the horns really takes away from the realism of this figure. But hey, that's what this video's for.
Now, I got new primer, but it's black because I didn't check when I bought it. We'll see how it goes. I'll probably just repaint it white before we start. Alright, prime time. Primed. Boom. And my hands are covered in paint.
Now initially I went with the immediate idea of painting this in the Prehistoric Planet color scheme, since that's my favorite depiction of Triceratops currently around in media. However, I decided I might want to make my own color scheme for some reason. I ended up with this idea referencing the eastern box turtle, Gambel's quail, and the rainbow ameva, coming up with this color scheme. I then polled my viewers on if they'd like this, the Prehistoric Planet design, or the Prehistoric Park design, and you guys voted for this one.
Well, I'm done, and I really am happy with how this turned out. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in another. Just kidding, are you stupid? I got you, didn't I?
Now the issue was that this was very complex for a color palette. A lot of subtle flecks and blends and placements of color that if I had succeeded probably would have looked great. And I might come back to this later, but I don't think I'm at the skill level to pull it off, honestly. But I did end up deviating from it, and sometimes the color scheme looked real good on rewatch, but I kept changing things until eventually it looked like this.
So this Triceratops, the paint job, I'm not very happy with it. I actually do like this concept with the red head and the brown and like the whiter top. I'm not pulling it off very well, and I've kind of lost the plot. It's completely different from the design that you guys voted on, and I'm gonna go back to my original idea of making this the Prehistoric Planet Triceratops because I'll have a clear reference for it, and it's a better video concept. I don't know why I even bothered doing this in the first place.
Why did you make me do this?
So after backtracking in another community post, like a bitch, I went back to my original idea. Now let's take a look at Prehistoric Planet's Triceratops to get a sense of what's going on. We see a generally gray to grayish green base with some tiger stripes and a darker bluish color. The underbelly is ever so slightly lighter, and the frill is a mixture of pastel warm colors that looks super nice. Also, this looks very much like Triceratops horridus, so this works. So to start, I mixed a medium light cool gray and covered all of my hard work I originally did. I then mixed a bit of a stronger green and dabbed that in a sort of pattern for color variation, before going in and adding the lighter underbelly.
Now with the base colors down, I'm going to put down a nice dark wash. This is going to be some extremely thinned out paint that'll go right into the recesses and really bring out the amazing scale detail here, really showing the huge scales as seen in the Lane specimen.
In this case, I mixed a dark blue, and it definitely made the scales stick out. Washes also help with building up color since they take a lot of layers. I used this for the stripes to make sure they weren't too stark, which is always a concern. Sure, if that's what you're going for, it can work, but if not, they end up sticking out a lot. Even then, the stripes were a bit more obvious than they were in the documentary, so I used this dry brush and dusted on some of that base color over it to bring it back. I really went to town with the washes, trying to bring out a bunch of color variation like you see in a real animal. Of course, this brings the risk of things looking muddy, so it was imperative I struck that balance. Gotta make sure to paint those nails too. As I transition into the face, I do have to say that the large scales make it really difficult to blend colors. Usually in models with really good paint, the details are very fine and that allows for blends, almost like using a canvas, rough but not obstructive. Meanwhile, these scales are big enough that I could probably have painted them individually if I was a lunatic. And that's where my gripe with the face texturing really comes in. The scales on the frill are so uniform that when I was trying to get that pigmented, almost iridescent look of the pinks and oranges, it was so frustrating. Washes after dry brushing after wet blending, and it kept looking off. Now, this might be a skill issue, in fact it probably is, but it bothered me and I wanted to vent a little bit. Meanwhile, the horns were the fun part. Sure, putting on that base layer sucked since they were so smooth the paint didn't have anything to grip onto, but it also led to some amazing looking keratin just from the paint.
Now the base layer is completely dry, and there's some gray showing through, but that's fine, that'll add some color variation. The next step is getting a black wash, really watered down black paint, and we just splop it on.
See, I wanted this sort of blackened look at the tips, like in modern bovids and the Eofauna trike, and the blending for that wasn't ideal. However, adding washes on a smooth surface leads to pooling and gravity doing most of the work. So even though there weren't distinct grooves to fill, in a way, they ended up looking more realistic because of it somehow. Then with a thorough cream dry brushing, they just really came together in a way I didn't expect when starting off with this. So here's the part that really brings the model to life, painting the eyes with this golden color and the really fucking small pupils. Well, that and painting the mouth, obviously. finally made this trike look alive again. The final touches were adding this matte finish to avoid that glossy look I sometimes get,
Oops, that's way too much.
and adding a gloss varnish to the eyes and mouth to make it look realistic. Also the nose. A quick nod to my dog. Now all that was left to do was the final reveal. And since model photography is always something I wanted to try, I went to the woods.